I've never been much of a Batman guy or a DC guy in general. Shows like Batman the Animated Series and Justice League both came out before I was born, and when things like the Arkham games were coming out, I was too young to play them. Even if those things were around for me, I likely wouldn't have taken an interest in them. Batman is a character who is so deeply ingrained in American culture that every child in this country knows who he is, even if they've never seen any movies, played any games, or read any comic books. And the same can be said of heroes like Superman or Wonder Woman. The big three of DC are the default superheroes. Everybody knows Batman is an orphan whose parents were murdered in front of him, and he channeled his pain and his family's wealth into being Batman. When you couple this with the fact that modern comic books, especially ones that concern legacy characters like Batman, are incredibly convoluted and have almost a century of lore behind them, then you can see why I was never crazy about following superhero comics. Until I saw this video.
Bats, holy shit! Who the fuck are you?
Don't you recognize me, Joker? It's me, Batman.
What in God's name happened to you? You look like you ate Bane.
I've been hitting the gym.
Your quad is the size of my whole torso.
I'm gonna stop you, Joker.
Stop me! I haven't even done anything! Is that an axe?
My reaction was basically the same as Joker's in that video. Who the fuck is this? Why is he larger than my car? Why does Batman, a character famous for his hand-to-hand combat and no-kill rule, have a fucking battle axe? I'm young enough that growing up, my only concept of DC was the Snyderverse, and all I heard from the people around me was that the Snyderverse movies were terrible. It's why I've always been a ride-or-die Marvel fan. The first movie I have memory of seeing in theaters is Thor, and whenever I poked my head into comics, I'd see shit like The Batman Who Laughs and immediately be disinterested. But this image, this cover art for the first issue of Absolute Batman, and the clip I just played, that had me hooked immediately. This ain't the Batman who laughs, this is the Batman who lifts. Bro looks like Barry Bonds on even more steroids. He looks like he OD'd on Popeye grade spinach. He probably weighed 25 pounds at birth, and the doctor had to do kettlebell drills to deliver him. Jokes aside, this shit genuinely fascinated me. A few days after seeing that video, I went to a local comic store and picked up a copy of the first issue for like 20 bucks. It was like a special edition or some shit, and it was all that was left on the shelf. The story I was met with was one of the most compelling stories I've seen in recent times. Absolute Batman and the Absolute Universe as a whole is an incredible saga about a group of heroes fighting against a corrupt system. The universe takes characters who have been deeply embedded in our culture for decades and tells brand new stories with them in ways that feel genuinely fresh and intriguing. I'd love to sit here and yammer about the whole Absolute Universe, but I thought I would keep things simple for this video and just focus on Batman. He is by far the most interesting character in the universe right now. So, let's talk about him. Let's talk about Absolute Batman, the things it draws from, the things it changes, and the overall themes of the comic. First, let's get into some basics. The Absolute Universe is helmed by writer Scott Snyder, who also writes the Absolute Batman series. Comic books are famous for having incredibly convoluted lore and backstories, especially comics involving the oldest and biggest names like Batman. Ventures like the Absolute Universe and Marvel's Ultimate Universe are recognitions of this fact. These new worlds aim to provide a jumping-on point for new fans, while giving old fans a chance to hear familiar stories told in new ways. You don't need to have an encyclopedic knowledge of every X-Men who's ever lived to start reading Ultimate X-Men. There is, of course, the All-In special, which explains the creation of the Absolute Universe and how it ties to the mainline continuity, but by no means is it required reading. The Absolute Universe is a nice, clean slate for the writers and artists to do whatever they want. With that in mind, I am going to explain the basics of how the universe came to be, and then we'll laser in on Batman himself. The DC Comics All-In Special is where the Absolute Universe properly begins. There's a big bad evil guy named Darkseid, and he is a fundamental force in the universe. His existence is required for the multiverse to function properly. His power ebbs and flows with the multiverse, making him stronger at times and weaker at others. As an extension of this, Darkseid basically has no free will. In order for balance to be maintained in the multiverse, Darkseid can never win or lose. If he dies, the multiverse creates a new Darkseid. If his enemies die, they will reemerge in a new form. Darkseid is the same, always, and he's fucking pissed at that. After binding the specter of death to himself, he channels his energy into taking over a new universe and twisting it to suit his own image. He changes the stories and worlds so that the heroes are at the bottom of the food chain, while the villains reign supreme. For example, instead of growing up on Themyscira surrounded by her sisters, Wonder Woman is raised in hell on the island of Circe the Witch. Instead of being the son to two wealthy and powerful scientists, Superman is the son of two laborers who are at the bottom of Kryptonian society. So, what changes have been made to Bruce Wayne? For starters, he's poor. Well, not poor, but he doesn't have the famous Wayne family fortune. He has a similar change to Superman, where instead of his family being at the top of society, he is firmly middle class. Thomas Wayne is a teacher and Martha is a social worker. Bruce grew up in Crime Alley, where he became lifelong friends with Waylon Jones, Oswald Cobblepot, Harvey Dent, Selena Kyle, and Edward Nygma. Young Bruce Wayne began to make a name for himself in 5th grade when he won an engineering competition for designing a special bridge that could be deployed to areas hit by disasters. The prize was a field trip for his whole class to the Gotham Zoo. This trip would be interrupted by Joe Chill shooting up the zoo and killing Thomas Wayne. After the Gotham Zoo shooting, Bruce ends up drifting for a bit, having some skirmishes with the law, until he cleans himself up and gets a football scholarship to the best university in the state. While he's there, he studies everything under the sun. Applied mechanics, chemistry, history, even psychology, before returning home to Gotham and taking a job as a civil engineer. One of the most striking things about Absolute Batman to me is how he turns the city of Gotham itself into a weapon. He's worked in every department under the sun, from sanitation to the power grid to housing construction. He knows the city inside and out, and he leverages that to his advantage. As an engineer and construction worker, he also fixes the things he breaks. In the first issue, he blows up the staircase outside City Hall as Batman and returns the next day as Bruce Wayne to help rebuild it. He also has plenty of stash houses hidden throughout the city, one of which is in an empty mega complex. He knows nobody will bother him up there because he knows the building is nothing more than a hollow investment. It's real estate meant to boost a portfolio. The billionaires who own the building he squats in don't actually use it for anything. Mainline Bruce lives in a mansion secluded from the rest of the city. He may know Gotham just as well as Absolute Bruce, but he isn't of the people there. He would probably own one of the buildings his counterpart is squatting in. Speaking of which, another striking change is how much more social Bruce is, for lack of a better word. The perception that I've always had of classic Bruce Wayne is that he's a loner. He's cut himself off from the world so that he can focus on being Batman all the time. His only real friends are Alfred and Robin. Absolute Bruce isolates himself after his father's death, and he does push his friends away, but he still has friends to speak of. There's a rather touching moment in issue 3 where Bruce is still grieving his father in a flashback, so his friends ambush him in a movie theater and force him to not be alone with himself. Bruce's bond with his friends isn't without plenty of dramatic irony, however. The names I rattled off earlier, the names of his friends, those are the real names of Killer Croc, the Penguin, Two-Face, Catwoman, and the Riddler. These guys are Bruce's best friends, but we all know that it's going to go to hell. Granted, I personally didn't expect it to go to hell as quickly as it did, but we'll get into that later. For now, let's talk about the first major arc of the series, the zoo.
When I was in Special Forces, my commanders always said, what makes a great leader is knowing when to advance forward and when to retreat and regroup. Every battle I think, this is the one. This is the moment where you'll realise it's time to retreat and regroup. But that moment never comes. Maybe that's what he is. All he is. One long advance forward. Batman AF.
The Zoo spans issues 1 through 6 and is focused on Batman's fight against a gang called the Party Animals, led by Roman Sionis, the Black Mask. The first issue opens with MI6 agent Alfred Pennyworth being briefed on his assignment. The Party Animals are a gang built purely on causing as much chaos as possible. Their only purpose is to murder people and cause as much destruction as they can. Mayor Jim Gordon has been trying his best to stop the gang and reassure the public, but his assurances are growing weaker by the day. Alfred's assignment isn't to stop the gang, it's to observe and report only. The Party Animals' next major attack occurs at City Hall, and it's where Batman makes his big entrance to the world. The following fight immediately sets a tone for this new world and this new Batman. This fight is commentated by Alfred, noting the precision, brutality, and showmanship of all his attacks. Things come to a head with this scene. Move! Out of my way! Listen, pal, this hand has killed more people than you can count. Now I'm gonna give you one chance. Get the fuck out of our way! Ah! I hear they can reattach those sometimes. There's a hospital 3 blocks south of here. Or is it east? I can't seem to remember. But I'd run. The rest of you have one chance to get the fuck out of my way! Batman is famous for his melee combat and his no-kill rule. The common perception of him rarely involves knives, guns, or other weapons. It's always his fists and his gadgets. The first fight sets the immediate tone that absolute Batman is not so gentle. He will not hesitate to resort to more violent tactics. He of course uses it to shut people down, but he also uses it as an intimidation tactic. Alfred notes the intentional sound of bones cracking and the extremely bloody knife work being used to send a message. The climax is cutting off the big dude's hand and sending it flying. This Batman isn't just using violence to be violent, he's using it as a tool. The next few issues take us through a couple of developments. The first is Batman's escalation of attacks against the party animals. The biggest point of character development is when Bruce joins his friends for poker night. He brings with him a party animals mask that he found whilst heading up the repairs at City Hall. He uses it as a conversation starter with his friends to get them talking about the party animals. Ozzy tells him that the gang isn't moving in on any of the other gangs' territories. They aren't making moves like they want to take over the city. Their only goal is carnage. Harvey also mentions that former Mayor Hill, Jim Gordon's election opponent, has been taking in a shit ton of capital lately. Batman takes this information and breaks into Hill's campaign office to root through his finances. He finds a large investment from a company called JK Holdings, a company invested in building private prisons and black sites. He then gets a surprise call from Black Mask, who makes him a cash offer of $200 million to walk away and let the party animals have the city. Let's zoom out for a moment. Let's look at the bigger picture. Bruce isn't just here fighting crime, he's fighting the establishment. He's fighting the billionaires. In issue 4, we get a flashback to when Bruce was just starting out as Batman. He's investigating drug and weapon trafficking being committed by the Maroni and Falcone crime families. His investigation leads him to eavesdrop on a charity event packed full of politicians and billionaires. The annual dance for a better Gotham charity ball. Gotham's finest come here to mingle, eat some caviar, and sponsor a competition in which youth dance teams from different neighborhoods compete for prizes. Me, I'm here for him. Randall Powers, the billionaire who owns the trucking conglomerate the Maronis and Falcones use. In the news, he was horrified by what I exposed, vowed to support new regulations on his trucks. But I hear him lobbying Max Mooney, head of GDOT, against tighter transit laws, promising him money. It takes everything in my body not to bust through the skylight and put him in the dance floor. The most significant change to Bruce, the change that all other changes are built on, is that he is no longer part of the status quo. In the mainline universe, he'd be one of the billionaires at this function. The point I'm about to make gets brought up a lot as a joke, but genuinely, Bruce Wayne would have more success fighting actual crime if he channeled his wealth into fighting poverty. Obviously, supervillains like Joker and Mr. Freeze are a different problem, but when it comes to things like drug dealing and robbery, people don't usually do it because they like it. They do it because they're desperate. Billionaires in our society have the ability to ease people's suffering. They could snap their fingers and choose to help everyone, but instead they hoard their wealth like a dragon hoards gold. Absolute Bruce is well aware of this. The guns and drugs the crime families funnel into Gotham come through Randall Powers' trucking company, where they go to wreak havoc on impoverished communities. And Powers? He doesn't care what his trucks are used for, so long as it makes him money. When someone calls him on his shit, sure, he pretends to act all horrified. He acts like he cares. He acts like he wants regulations, but he knows the most he'll get is a slap on the wrist. Bruce symbolizes a growing American resentment against the elites, especially amongst the younger generations. This Bruce is 24. He's only a year older than me. He symbolizes the kind of anger that I and other people my age hold against those in power on both sides of the aisle, which is why it didn't come as a surprise to me when he refused the money. To be pedantic, he does initially accept the $200 million, except he then withdraws every dollar of that money and makes a bat signal with it. During the meeting with Black Mask, he makes it clear that he doesn't need his money or his resources. The only thing he needs is Batman. He sticks a tracker on Black Mask during the meeting and traces him back to his party yacht in the middle of the river. It's here that we have another stark departure from the mainline Batman. Batman is famous for keeping everything about his identity as Bruce Wayne as tightly wrapped as possible. Most of the Justice League don't even know who he really is. Bruce hides his secret because he has a company and public image to maintain, and maintaining that image lets him keep the wealth he uses to be Batman. Absolute Batman has no public image to maintain, nor does he need money to be Batman. He's done everything by himself with basically nothing. The only reason he guards his identity is so his friends and family aren't targeted. This changes at the end of issue 5, where an injured Bruce shows up to Wayland's gym begging for help from his friends. He was already using his friends for Batman work, like when he gave the party animals mask to Eddie, but now they're fully aware of who he is. Bruce asks Ozzy to fly him to Black Mask's boat with his plane. He climbs on board and beats the fuck out of his staff, which is where we get one of the funniest sequences in the run so far. I'll kill you! I'll cut you up, you fucking asshole! I'm gonna... Hey, what are you doing, man? You can't do this to me! I'm just a kid! I'm just a little guy! Hey, kiddo? You out here? Oh. Bruce continues inward where he meets Black Mask and kicks his fucking ass. Bruce at this point is very heavily injured, but he has one more task left. After Eddie analyzed the party animal's mask, he found that the mask pays people for committing violent crimes using crypto. There is no way to take the network completely offline, but there is a local server on the yacht which can be taken down. So of course, Bruce blows it up and dives off the boat, stopping the party animals from continuing their attacks. Alfred finds him on the beach and drags him out of the water. Alfred has been in and out of the story so far, mostly being used by the book as a way to narrate on the unfolding events. He also had a small side story with his daughter Julia. He was actually ordered to leave Gotham by MI6, but he stays in town to help Bruce. The zoo concludes with Batman having succeeded against his first major foe and doing it his way. Being an active reader of 4 of the 6 absolute lines, I would say a major theme of these books is heroes doing things their way instead of the normal way. Especially Batman. Darkseid created this universe with an imagined status quo that does not change. Anything that stands out against the system is destroyed. Batman is not only a rebuttal of the system, but proof that the system doesn't need to be followed. Black Mask repeatedly ridicules Batman for thinking he accomplished something by defeating him. He's convinced that no matter what Batman does, the system will survive, he will survive, and Batman will be buried. His defeat at Batman's hand proves that the system can be broken. Instead of Bruce taking the money and becoming part of the system, he chooses to stand on his own. But what would happen if he took the money? What would happen if he started working for the system? What if they gave him an offer to become the most powerful hero the world would ever know? What would happen if he accepted that offer?
1942, Gotham City. Ted Grant, a professional boxer, is framed for murder by small-time hoods. Grant's young and he's romantic. He puts on a cat costume, beats the hell out of the hoods, and clears his name. He calls himself the Wildcat. The neighborhood eats it up. So, he busts some more small-time hoods, then medium-time hoods. On a stakeout, he overhears a factory inspector taking a bribe from a munitions magnate to look the other way on safety standards. And then, Ted Grant comes into $50,000. Tax-free. And that's the end of Wildcat. He buys a gym, trains a couple of champions, and dies peacefully in his sleep.
It starts on an island, Santa Prisca, an island which has seen numerous foreign takeovers and countless periods of unrest and fighting. First came the Spanish, then the French, then the Dutch. Every time the people of the island throw them off, but the island is rich in things the world wants, so they never stop coming. It begins with a group, Cielo Libre, and its leader fathering a son. The boy would eventually go on to lead Cielo Libre himself. He would lead them to many victories against their oppressors. The group would even hold the capital for 3 days before foreign troops would arrive and throw them all in prison. It continues in Peñadoro, the most notorious prison in the world. After 11 years of waiting, plotting, preparing, the boy leads a riot and frees his people from the prison. They cross the bay, heading towards the capital once again. The boy's father hands him a mask, made from the flag of Santa Prisca, adorned with its national bird. The boy and his people arrive at the beach, ready to storm the capital, when they are stopped by a man in white. The boy speaks to the man in white alone. What the man says to him is unknown, but we can imagine it involves the future of Santa Prisca. The man in white paints a picture of the island thriving. Schools, hospitals, jobs, a future where the boy's people need not be oppressed anymore. The boy returns to his father and gives him a hug. He then snaps his father's back. This boy would come to be known as Bane. Bane is a parallel to Bruce. Both of them started by waging wars against their oppressors. Bane was fighting the foreigners who controlled his island, and Bruce is fighting the wealthy elites and billionaires who control Gotham. The difference is Bane took the money. Instead of fighting the system, he became the system. Now, let's be charitable and assume that Bane took some time to weigh his options. They took the capital once before, and they paid for it with 11 years in the worst prison in the world. They might not be able to take it a second time, and even if they did, foreign troops would come again and take it, no doubt at the behest of the man in white. From a practical standpoint, taking the money was the safest and easiest way for Bane to free his people. The only catch is, he is not free himself. The man in white turns him into a living weapon. Bane undergoes a shit ton of surgeries that turn him into a monster. The centerpiece of his transformation is, of course, Venom, a compound that increases his size, strength, and mental acuity. He then gets sent all over the world by the man in white, assassinating various political targets. Issue 9 opens with peace talks between the countries of Kahndaq and Korak. The two leaders agree to nationalize their country's resources, presumably ripping them from the hands of foreign investors. Bane then enters the room and sabotages the talks, killing one of the leaders and forcing the other to escalate the war. Bane is a tool used by the man in white to further his own interests around the world, and those interests now include stopping Batman. Bruce at this point is dealing with a lot of personal drama while balancing his investigation of JK Holdings. JK's private prison in Gotham, Arc M, is already up and running. Issues 7 and 8 are a short side story where Bruce catches up with an old associate who is murdered by Absolute Mr. Freeze. He also has a falling out with his friends who are obviously kinda pissed at him for hiding Batman from them. Bruce is adamant that he kept Batman a secret to protect them, but they make the point that he used them during his training to become Batman, interning with Harvey, training with Wayland, slumming with Ozzy, and studying with Eddie. The five of them end the argument by saying that whatever happens, they're all part of Batman now. They're with him. After this conversation, Batman infiltrates Freeze's company disguised as a city engineer. VTech is in the business of cryogenically freezing wealthy clients so that they can one day be unfrozen when a cure for their ails has been found. Victor and Nora Freeze are frozen themselves while their son Vic Jr. runs the company. Vic was also frozen at one point, and being in the ice turned him into this fuck-ass thing. Vic has been working with JK Holdings and Arc M to gather genetic profiles on everyone in the city so they can be cataloged and taken to Arc M for experimentation, such as with Wayland, who gets kidnapped by some dudes in suits and hauled off to Arc M. Arc M is located across the river from Center City, Gotham. There used to be a mental hospital on the site, but it burned down in 1945. The site was then purchased by JK Holdings. Arc M has been under construction for months at this point, and there are already inmates inside, including one Wayland Croc Jones. It's here that the Abomination storyline begins, taking place in issues 9 through 14. The story starts with Bruce infiltrating Arc M in search of Wayland. While making his way through the Ark, he encounters Bane, who pretty handily defeats Bruce, and he does it without even needing to use the venom. He only uses it after Bruce calls him a juiced-up freak. When he does use it, he grows even larger than he already was, and we get another just absolutely incredible panel in Bruce's reaction. Bruce is held captive in Arc M for almost 3 months, and during that time, he makes repeated escape attempts using increasingly ridiculous methods. He somehow made a bomb out of bat shit and his own piss, he ripped his own teeth out to use his brass knuckles, and he leveraged an implanted feeding tube to spray his own raw stomach acid on people. Each time he makes an escape, Bane recaptures him and throws him back in lockup. After the third try, they subject him to the same round of brutal surgeries that Bane underwent, which include the implantation of a venom delivery system in his spine. He escapes a fourth time because Bane decided to test him by putting his gear in his cell to test if he's truly been broken. Bruce, of course, hasn't been broken because why would you even think that at this point? The man made a weapon by ripping his own teeth out. This motherfucker was never going to go down that easy. During his fourth escape attempt, Bane beats him up yet again, but he is rescued by Wayland. Waylon has been experimented on pretty heavily by the scientists at Arc M, and he has now completed his transformation into Killer Croc. After Bruce and Waylon escape, Bane heads out and attacks the rest of Bruce's friends. He beats the hell out of Ozzy, breaking every single bone in his body, but in such a way that he would still be alive. Harvey gets his body burned before having his head split in two, and Bane beats up Eddie by smashing his frontal lobe against his skull over and over, making him stupid. He is able to fix himself though with cybernetics. We all knew it was coming. We all knew these guys were going to turn into their mainline counterparts. It was only a question of when it would happen. I personally thought it would have taken longer for them to get all twisted, but in the context of the story, I get it. They wanted in on Batman, and Bruce let them in. They ended up being brutalized because of it. This builds resentment between Bruce and his friends, and it's what will eventually turn them against each other down the line. Following the brutal attacks on Bruce's friends, he decides he's going to war against Bane. Issue 13 sees Selina Kyle making her debut as Absolute Catwoman. Prior to this point, Selina had effectively vanished from everyone's lives. Flashbacks during the zoo mention how she's been through multiple foster homes, and later we get a mention of how nobody has seen her in ages, save for a postcard Waylon got from Cairo. She and Bruce had a thing going before she left, and while it's never explicitly stated, I can imagine Bruce isn't happy about her vanishing with barely any contact. She's been spending her time away from Gotham as a master thief, and she came back to Gotham when Martha called her and said Bruce was missing. Bruce is obviously kinda pissed at her for just showing up after years of no contact, so obviously he has no other choice than to sleep with her. She then helps him and Alfred prepare to take down Bane. Part of their prep involves meeting a bald-ass Harley Quinn, leader of a gang called the Red Hoods. My only exposure to Harley Quinn as a character has been Suicide Squad and The Funny Lesbian Show, so I'm gonna avoid making many comments about her, aside from the rather obvious observation that she started as the Joker's girlfriend before leaving him after he was incredibly abusive to her, and in this universe, she starts off hating him from the get-go. Part of me is curious if this version of Harley is going to have a personal history with this world's Joker, but I doubt it. There's no way I can think of that allows for her and Ivy to get together either, which is a real damn shame. Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy have always had a very complicated relationship, both in and out of comics, that DC has only recently started to openly acknowledge. I'm fine with them not intersecting at all if there isn't a logical reason for them to cross paths, but I still have hope. Listen, I'm a simple man with simple tastes. Pork roll bagel melt from Wawa in the morning, cheesesteak with bacon for dinner, and as much Yuri as I could get my hands on. Give the people what they want, Scott. And by the people, I mean me. I'm the people. Give me what I want. Put the lesbians in the bag. We cut back to Bane for a moment in Arc M, where we get an interesting revelation. Bane fucking hates his job. He's not here because he wants to be. He's here because he is hoping Bruce will become the new Bane. He thinks that once his work is done here, and Batman has been made a puppet of the Man in White, that he will be able to go home and rest, enjoy the fruits of his labor. This is, of course, laughable. Even his doctors are like, "You sure, bud?" Bane represents the idea that working with the system is the only way to change things. He falsely believes that his loyalty will be repaid with freedom. What he fails to understand is this could only happen if this deal was made on somewhat equal ground. This was never a balanced deal to begin with, despite what Bane may think. If Bane had said no, the Man in White would just bomb Santa Prisca and start over. This deal was made so he could get a new lapdog. The only way this ends for Bane is with his death or his continued service. Bruce challenges Bane to a final duel at an old stadium. He makes a big show of hacking news broadcasts to deliver an ultimatum to Bane and to Gotham. He tells the city how its leaders have sold them out and they're making monsters right below their feet. We then get the absolutely incredible line, "I'm going to drag one of these monsters into the light and then I'm gonna beat his ass." And you damn well know he's gonna do it his own way. Everyone around him keeps pushing him to use the venom in the fight. Alfred is convinced there's no way for Bruce to win without taking advantage of it. But Bruce is convinced that the only way to beat Bane is to do it his way, without the venom. So he has Eddie extract all of it from his system and he gives it to Selina. During the fight, he goads Bane into using more and more venom until his system is at maximum capacity. And then Selina shoots him with Bruce's venom and completely overloads him. Bane physically cannot handle the amount of venom that's in his body at this point. He grows and grows until he explodes in a pile of human goo. Bruce dumps what's left of him into the river, live for all of Gotham to see. Bane was determined to break Bruce. He was certain that if he put him through enough pain, he would cave. He wanted nothing more than for Bruce to use the venom during the fight. After all, it would have been the sensible decision to make, to use every card in your deck. After Bruce beats his ass, Alfred's narration points out the thing that Bane never realized. For some soldiers, winning isn't the point. It's about doing what's right. No more, no less. Batman isn't fighting to win. He's fighting to fight. The fight is the point. How he beats someone is just as important as beating them at all. Bane wanted Bruce to become part of the system, but Bruce refused. And at the end of it all, what is Bane's reward?
Well, good morning. I must say, Bane, you're looking wonderful today. Your cells, they're just such a marvel. But I'm here because someone else wants to talk to you. Here.
Bane, I just wanted to put your mind at ease. This whole incident, I see it as a minor setback. Now, look, I know you were hoping to retire, cede the role, but my sincere belief is that wouldn't make you happy. Lying around Santa Prisca with the family? Come on, you love it too much. This war. So, as your friend, I'd like to help. What was the name of your father's rebel group again? Cielo Libre. What a beautiful name. Free skies. That's how I want you to feel from now on, so you can focus on what you really love. Unburdened, liberated, free. This is Bane's reward. His reward for becoming the system instead of fighting it. He gets no peace. He gets no freedom. He doesn't even get his people, the thing he fought so hard to protect. All he has is death and servitude to the man in white. We've beat around the bush for long enough. It's time to address him, the man in white, the man at the center of everything, the one pulling the strings and making the world dance to his tune. The paragon of everything that Batman has been fighting against. The Joker.
I've been chasing this man for 3 years, and I'm still not certain what's real and what's fabrication. Some things add up, and some things make no bloody sense at all. On paper, nothing is so scary about him. Just the 5th chapter in a story about a family that's made its fortune by embracing that very first love. A clown.
It starts in the late 19th century with the first film ever made. A video of a boy performing a clown routine for onlookers. Many of the people in the film die soon after it's shot. They are found twisted in pain and grinning. The boy, Jack Grimm, starts a movie studio and grows his fortune. He assembles generational wealth by the time he's 40. He donates lots of money to children's causes. His son would expand the company into television. As his father funded his own studio and the studios of rivals, Jack Jr. would support the American government in World War II while also funding the Nazis. The Grimm family would continue to expand their fortune by playing both sides always. They fund left-leaning and right-leaning news. They get into public television, video games, microchips, and all the while playing both sides to every issue, while silencing their rivals. History is littered with the bodies of those who crossed paths with the Grimm family and suffered mysterious ends. Alfred believes they are the most powerful crime family in history, playing everyone against each other and reaping the chaos. The greatest joke anyone has ever played by the world's greatest clown. Because the only thing that makes a Grimm smile is pain. There are records of Grimm investments into things like bioweapons, the atomic bomb, viruses, and during the tests, the Grimms are seen laughing. Except there is no family of Grimms. There has only ever been one. Whether it's through magic, science, or some other method, that little boy juggling for crowds is the same man who bombed Santa Prisca. Except that man isn't a man. He's a monster. He's the Joker. Bruce Wayne in the mainline universe is the idealistic version of a billionaire, the ultra-wealthy mogul who gives back to the people and just wants to help. Absolute Joker is how billionaires actually work. Billionaires do not get to where they are without stepping on top of others. Amazon didn't become as big as it is by playing by the rules. They did it by selling things at a loss and buying out their competitors when they couldn't keep up. Adobe didn't create half the stuff they own. They bought it from someone else and then made it worse. Hashtag DaVinci for life. AT&T was so big and bad that the government had to forcibly break them up to stop them from strangling the market. Jack Grimm made his fortune by playing both sides to every issue. Alfred paints Jack Grimm as the ultimate jester. He says that clowns depict humanity as blubbering fools, a mockery of everything we stand for, and Jack Grimm is the ultimate embodiment of that parody. He sees the world for its cruelty and evil, and he revels in it. It's at this point that I'm going to revise a statement I made at the beginning of the video. I said earlier that I've never read a comic book before, but that isn't entirely accurate. The more complete version of that statement is, I've never paid active attention to a current comic run before. I have read some comic books, mostly the works of Alan Moore. The one I want to spend time talking about today is one of his most famous works, The Killing Joke. This is basically my only reference point for what the mainline Joker is like, so it's going to be my main point of comparison between Jack Grimm and Joker. And, by the way, whenever I say Joker in this section, I'm referring to the mainline Joker. When talking about Absolute, I will say Jack Grimm. The Joker's worldview in Killing Joke is that the world is too cruel and evil for anyone to stay sane. His philosophy is that all it takes to turn someone into him, all it takes to turn someone insane, is one bad day. He makes the reasonable assumption that something similar had to have happened to Batman, and he tortures Jim Gordon to try and prove his point. The world is cruel and evil, and going crazy is the only action that makes sense. I mean, what is it with you? What made you what you are? Girlfriend killed by the mob? Brother carved up by some mugger? Something like that, I bet. Something like that happened to me, you know. I'm not exactly sure what it was. Sometimes I remember it one way, sometimes another. If I'm going to have a past, I prefer it to be multiple choice. My point is, I went crazy! When I saw what a black, awful joke the world was, I went crazy as a coot. I admit it! Why can't you? I mean, you're not unintelligent. You must see the reality of the situation. Do you know how many times we've come close to World War III over a flock of geese on a computer screen? It's all a joke! Everything anybody ever valued or struggled for. It's all a monstrous, demented gag. So why can't you see the funny side? Why aren't you laughing? Because I've heard it before, and it wasn't funny the first time. Batman is the hole in Joker's worldview. If you are faced with a horrible tragedy and your only logical option is to go crazy, then why isn't Batman crazy? Why isn't the whole world crazy? Why is it only him? He didn't torture Gordon just to prove his point to Batman. He needed to prove the point to himself just as much. But Gordon didn't break. He didn't go insane, and neither did Batman. It was always him. He was always the problem. Jack Grimm's presence in Absolute Batman has only been tangible in more recent issues, so our exposure to him is somewhat limited. By far the two biggest windows into his life are issue 15 of Absolute Batman and a special crossover issue called Absolute Evil. Batman issue 15 is a special issue devoted entirely to Alfred telling Bruce about Jack and the history of the Grimm family. It was the main source I used for the backstory at the beginning of this section. Absolute Evil offers less in the way of direct historical information, but it gives us a very clear look into his psyche. Absolute Evil is a special meeting where all the big bad evil guys of the different Absolute runs have a meeting. The meeting is called by Veronica Cale the BBEG of Wonder Woman. She proposes that everyone at the table pool their resources together. The US government, Lazarus Corp, JK Holdings, they can all work together to fight the heroes and do-gooders that have been cropping up as of late. Thawne and Hammond are both resistant to the idea, with Thawne making a comment about how they aren't friends. This sets Jack off on a rant where he tells them about the Omega Particle. The Omega Particle was recently discovered by scientists at one of his particle accelerators. He tells them that this particle is the fundamental force of the universe. It is similar to the Higgs boson, or God particle, but it also has what Jack describes as a moral property to it. The fundamental forces of this universe trend in one direction, and now we know that includes societal forces as well. Gravity distorts the universe, and so the river runs, the curtain falls, the yoke is heavy. We accept that man is tethered to the earth. We do not believe that a man can fly. With this discovery, we must now accept that there is likewise a moral gravity, pulling down, keeping everything that is in its place. Existence is ordered and ordained. Water flows downhill. Those who have. Those who have not. The rich get richer. The poor get poorer. Some hold the winning cards, and some clutch at a handful of jokers. This is not chance. This is not accident. This is design. The sore losers in the game of life see their fate woven in the fabric of creation and rail against it. Call it doom. There's a philosophical term for that. The just world fallacy. Imagine being so twisted, so filled with hate, so paralyzed by fear. Imagine thinking it a fallacy that the world can be just. But the world is just. We have evidence, not of doom, but of a natural order, worked upon the world by a higher power. If spoiled little anarchists like the late Oliver Queen would stand against that order, that I call injustice. And injustice must be fought. Chaos must be fought. We must fight it. And how can we fail? God is on our side. Jack Grimm already saw the world as his to take. He was already playing a cruel joke on humanity, but the Omega Particle gives him the proof he needs to decide he is justified in his thinking. The world is built for him. He belongs at the top. Jack Grimm is king, and all others beneath him are pawns. The universe itself is telling him that his worldview is correct, except for one slight issue. Veronica Cale started the meeting by talking about previous heroes who have risen in the past and were summarily taken out. Wildcat, Sandman, Iron Monroe, and countless others have risen against the status quo before, and like Bane, all of them were laid low in one way or another. But the new generation of heroes is a problem. When Cale begins talking about Batman, Jack Grimm broods for a moment over the fact that he didn't take the money offered to him. He didn't do what Ted Grant and Bane did. Now, the story of Absolute Joker is still actively unfolding and developing, but I believe that this moment, right here, speaks to a small crack in Jack's worldview. He and others like him are supposed to be on top, and whenever someone threatens that, they are dealt with. But Batman didn't take the money. Superman didn't bow to Lazarus. Wonder Woman won't listen to the military. These new heroes aren't bending over as easily as the old ones did. Absolute Batman is the same hole in Jack Grimm's worldview that Batman is for Jokers, because Bruce's own worldview is uncompromising, unwavering, unflinching. He stands against everything Jack Grimm represents. The story of Absolute Batman is unabashedly anti-billionaire. The Absolute Universe as a whole is very anti-establishment and anti-corporation. To some extent, all the runs contain themes about fighting against a corrupt world order and refusing to accept the way the world is. In an interview with YouTuber Owen Likes Comics, Scott Snyder says Batman is meant to represent the indomitable will that younger generations hold. When he was a writer for the mainline Batman, he wrote the comics so that mainline Bruce was fighting the things that Scott himself was most afraid of. His inspiration for writing Absolute Batman is his 3 sons. He's afraid for the world that is being left behind for his children. He name drops Alfred as being his personal vantage point in the series. Alfred and Snyder both feel guilty about the world they are leaving behind, and they're watching the younger generation fight for something greater. The idea that the previous generation failed is another theme that permeates the run, and it isn't just contained to Alfred. Characters like Jim Gordon and Martha Wayne both express regrets about the world they are leaving behind for their children. These discussions come to a head in the Absolute Batman Annual.
Why did they do that, Dad? I don't know, Bruce. I'm just one person. I don't know how to fix the world. But I know what I'm good at. Teaching. Every student I meet, I know I have a chance to make a difference in their life. So maybe someday, one of my students will make the same mistakes these people did. And what about you, kiddo? What will you do?
The Absolute Batman 2025 Annual is a special issue that was released a year after the run began. The two stories in the annual take place before the events of the first issue. We'll be focusing on the first story, written by Daniel Warren Johnson. It shows Bruce buying equipment from a store in a small town outside Gotham. The town has encampments of migrants outside who came looking for work, but were left without it when the construction company abruptly pulled out of the town. Some of those migrants get attacked outside the store by a hate mob, and Bruce runs to their rescue, but he unfortunately ends up taking a wrench to the head from the store owner. It's here that we are introduced to Father Peters, a preacher who dives on top of Bruce to save him from being attacked. The hate group eventually fucks off, and Peters drags Bruce to his home and bandages him up. Peters tells Bruce that the leader of the gang rolled into town 6 months ago. He started spreading his hatred around the town and recruiting men to his cause. Tonight, they plan to run the migrant encampment out of town by any means necessary. Bruce, of course, isn't having any of that shit, and he starts packing up to go after them. Meanwhile, the leader of the gang meets up with some cops who are in league with him because, of course they are, fucking pigs. The group begins ransacking the encampment, attacking everyone they see while their leader proclaims the glory of white power. And then we get the hardest panel in the entire Absolute universe, where Batman snaps his arm like a fucking twig. Everything about this panel is just perfect. The sheer look of terror on that smug bastard's face, the righteous fury on Batman's, the guy's bones being moved in ways they shouldn't. This panel takes up an entire 2-page spread of the book, and it's glorious. The next few pages consist of Bruce beating the shit out of the rest of the gang and the two corrupt cops, including another awesome panel where he gives a flying knee to the shopkeep from earlier. After the gang leader tries shooting at Bruce, he knocks the gun out of his hand and starts wailing on him. It's here that Peters reemerges. Father Peters jumps in the way, the same way he jumped over Bruce earlier. He pleads with Bruce to reconsider. He says that he doesn't know how to fix things, but he knows that this isn't going to make anything better. Bruce angrily declares to him that this is his way of doing things. He continues on to the headquarters of the gang where the rest of its members are regrouping. Bruce attacks them there and lights them up with a flamethrower, burning down their headquarters. After the dust has settled, Father Peters comes back with his first aid kit and starts tending to the wounded. He tells Bruce, "You have your way, and I have mine." Batman in this story represents the righteous anger and hatred that the younger generation holds for the world. Father Peters represents the older generation who have fought our fight before and feel that they have lost. He's seen a lot of shit in his lifetime, and he feels that nothing he did worked. Certainly not for a lack of trying. Peters was an activist who marched for reform and change. He wants to help people by reaching them with his kindness. Even with a scar on his face and a bad eye, he is committed to the tactics of nonviolence. He believes that the best way to help people is by educating and healing them. There's a moment when he's protecting Bruce where he's able to get through to one of the gang members for just a moment. Caring for people and being kind can go a long way towards keeping them away from the path of violence and hatred. I agree with Father Peters to an extent. Violence shouldn't be the first answer to every problem. When given a chance to thrive, love will trump hate every time. But there are times when love will never be enough. There are people who are so deeply ingrained in their hatred that they will never allow themselves to be healed. There are people in this world who are simply too selfish, too greedy, too obsessed, or simply too stupid to see the harm that they cause. That is who Absolute Batman is for. Batman is not for the people who can be saved. He's for the people who can't. He is what waits for you when your life is lived with hatred. So, that's where we're at so far with the story of Absolute Batman. What's coming next? What does the future hold for the run? Issues 17 and 18 are the two most recent issues at time of writing. They involve a short side plot with Poison Ivy that saw Bruce grappling with the fallout from Bane's attacks on his friends. His friends don't want to speak to him because they blame him for what happened. Issue 16 saw the Absolute Universe's first ever crossover event with Wonder Woman, which saw Bruce going to a mystical realm to retrieve an artifact that would turn Wayland human again. He also is grappling with the fact that Batman is bigger than ever, with people selling t-shirts and merchandise on the street. He wanted Batman to be big. He wanted to inspire people, but he is unnerved at how his symbol's being co-opted like that. Issue 18 also sees Gordon point out the fucking obvious fact that 6'9", 400 pounds isn't exactly subtle or stealthy. The subplot in these two issues also sees Martha Wayne speaking with the Court of Owls. Apparently Martha used to be a super assassin or some shit for the court. Personally, I'm not really a huge fan of this development, but you know what? Scott Snyder created the Court of Owls during his time with mainline Batman, and he hasn't given me a reason to doubt him yet, so I'm gonna trust him. I'm gonna let him cook. Speaking of which, I would like to make a note about Absolute Batman in a more meta sense. I personally believe the greatest villain of the series isn't Joker, it's Scott Snyder. I would describe Scott as being like a really eager dungeon master who really wants to show his players what he's been cooking and ends up revealing way too much. Snyder has a habit of sharing important story details and sneak peeks on Twitter and at conventions, and I sometimes wish he'd put a lid on it and let us experience things for ourselves. Admittedly, yes, that is my fault for seeking these things out. But it isn't just Scott's Twitter feed that spoils things. I keep thinking about how cool it would have been if I turned the page on issue 15 and was greeted with the image of Demon Joker for the very first time right then and there, instead of having him be on the front cover. Absolute Evil played with Joker's true form brilliantly. There are some panels where we see pieces of his true form, his true rage, peeking out from underneath his carefully maintained visage. There was all that concealment and intrigue, only for his true form to be spoiled on the front page of the book. Granted, I understand that the hype machine needs to be fed. As much as I disagree with that cover, it got people to talk about the book. Absolute Batman had already struck the cultural G-spot, and the reveal of Joker's true form only amplified things. I also understand the want to share details about upcoming projects because you're passionate about it. It's why I share previews of my videos on Patreon and give sneak peeks on Discord. I am by no means faulting Scott for being passionate about the thing he loves doing. I get it. I really do. I just hope he starts to think a little more tactically about the information he chooses to share. As for any non-comic fans watching this video, I cannot recommend this series any harder. It is so good. As someone who was never an active reader of comic books before, this series has been an absolute joy to experience. If you are an active reader of comic books, then please let me know what you think of the run in the comments. I try to read every comment on my videos, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you all so much for watching. If you would like to support me and my content, then please consider subscribing to my Patreon and following me on Blue Sky. Thank you so much for watching, and have a nice day. And now, in lieu of my normal outtake sequence, here's all the jokes about Absolute Batman I couldn't fit into the intro. Like Hercules did his 12 labors dressed as his persona. Like someone anthropomorphized Diesel from Thomas the Tank Engine. That's not Batman, that's Barra-Man. If he punched me in the face, I would shit myself like that scene in Longest Yard. He had to work in sanitation to make sure Gotham sewers could handle his bowling ball-sized shits. Bro trained with the Tibetan hunks. He stared into the void and the void blinked. If I bottled his piss, I could sell it as White Monster. He doesn't hit the gym, he assaults it. Selena probably needed a safe word just to hold his hand. He looks like if... Am I just doing Chuck Norris jokes with Batman?